Hello. In this video, we are going to continue to discuss the historical perspectives in 1976 to 2000. In 1976, Proclamation 1605 declared in 1977 to 1987 as the decade of the Filipino child. The National Action Plan for Education was promulgated, which included provisions for in and out of school exceptional children. In the same year, the first Camp Pag-ibig, a day camp for handicapped children, was held on Valentine's Day in Belara, Quezon City. Meanwhile, the Juvenile and Domestic Relation Courts in Quezon City organized the Malawi Youth Hall for children with behavior problems. In 1977, MEC issued Department Order Number 10 that designated regional and division supervisors of special education programs. The West Visayas State College of Iloilo City started its teacher training programs and offered scholarships to qualified teachers. The Pacara Special Education Center Division of Ilocos Sur and the Bacolod Special Education Center Division of Bacolod City opened in the same year. The year 1978 marked the creation of the National Commission Concerning Disabled Person, or NCCDP, later named National Council for the Welfare of Disabled Person, or NCWDP, through Presidential Decree 1509. The MEC Memorandum Number 285 directed school divisions to organize special classes with a set of guidelines on the designation of teachers who have no formal training in special education. In the same year, the University of the Philippines opened its special education teacher training program for undergraduate students. Meanwhile, the Philippine Association for the Deaf, or PAD, started its mainstreaming program in the division of Manila City Schools. The Davao Special School for the Arts was organized in the division of Davao City, while the Philippine High School for the Arts was organized in Mount Makiling, Laguna. The second International Conference on Legislation Concerning Disabled was held in Manila under the leadership of PFRD. In 1978, the Bureau of Elementary Education Special Education Unit conducted a 2-year nationwide survey of unidentified exceptional children who were in school. The Caritas Medico Pedagogical Institution for the Mentally Retarded was organized. The Hagna Special Education Center in the Division of Bohol was organized. The School for Crippled Children at the Southern Island Hospital in Cebu City was organized in 1980. In 1981, the United Nations Assembly proclaimed the observance of International Year of Disabled Persons. Three education programs were inaugurated. The Exceptional Child Learning Center at the West City Central School Division of Dumaguete City, the, Zapa- the, Zap- the Zapatera Special Education at the Division of Cebu, and the Deaf Evangelistic Alliance Foundation, or DEF, in Cavinti, Laguna. Now let's proceed to 1980. In 1982, three special schools were opened. The Cebu State College High School for the Deaf, the Siaton Special Education Center in Division of Negros Oriental, and the St. John Maria di Vianney Special Education Learning Center in Quezon City. In 1983, Batas Pambansa Biling 344 enacted the Accessibility Law, an act to enhance the mobility of disabled persons by requiring cars, buildings, institutions, establishments, and public utilities to install facilities and other devices. In the same year, the Batak Special Education in the Division of Ilocos Norte was organized. In 1984, two special education programs were inaugurated: the Labangon Special Education Center Division of Cebu City and the Northern Luzon Association Hines Walk School for the Blind at the Marcos Highway in Baguio City. More SPED centers opened the next 3 years. In 1987, Pedro Acharon Special Education Center in Division of General Santos City was opened. Also, the Legazpi City Special Education Center in Pag-asa, Legazpi City, and Dao Special Education Center in the Division of Pampanga. In 1990, the Philippine Institute for the Deaf, or PID, an oral school for children with hearing impairment, was established. The following year, the first National Congress on Children was held at the LaSalle Green Hills in San Juan, Metro Manila. In 1992, the summer training for teachers of the visually impaired started at the Philippine Normal University. The program was sponsored by the Department of Education and Culture, or DEX, Department of Education, Culture and Sports, or DEX, the Resources for the Blind Incorporated, or RBI, and the Christoffel Blind and Mission, CBM. In 1993, DEX issued Order number 14 that directed regional offices to organize the Regional Special Education Council, or RSEC. The years 1993 to 2002 was declared as the Asian and the Pacific Decade of the Disabled Person. Three conventions were held in 1995. The first National Congress on Mental Retardation at the University of the Philippines in Diliman, Quezon City, the first National Convention on the Deaf Education in Cebu City, which subsequently held every 2 years, and the first National Sports Summit for the Disabled and the Elderly. The National Registration Day for persons with disabilities was held this year too. The summer training of teachers for children with hearing impairment started at Philippine Normal University with funding from the Christoffel Blinded Mission, or CBM. Now, in 1996, the third week of January was declared as Autism Consciousness Week. Likewise, the first National Congress on Visual Impairment was held in Quezon City and subsequently held every 2 years. The first seminar workshop on information technology for the visually impaired was held in Manila, sponsored by RBI. The first Congress on Special Needs Education was held in Baguio City. A number of events took place in 1997. The Department of Education, Culture and Sports Order Number 1 was issued, which directed the organization of a regional special education unit and designation of a regional supervisor for special education. Similarly, the next Order Number 26, which promulgated the institutionalization of special education programs in all schools. The first Wheelathon, a race for wheelchair users, was the main event of the 19th National Disability Prevention and Rehabilitation Week. The SPED mobile training on inclusive education at the regional level was held with the funding of CBM. The Ordinata 2 Special Education Center was opened in the division of Urdaneta City, and the Bayawan West Special Education Center in the division of Negros Oriental. The first teacher training programs for the integration of autistic children was held in Marikina City. In 1998, the Department of Education and Cultures and Sports issued an order number 5, the reclassification of regular teacher and principal items to special education teacher and special schools principal item was Palarong Pinoy May K was held at Philsport Complex in Pasig City. The La Union Special Education Center was opened in the division of La Union. The following events took place in 1999. The Pilspada National Sports Competition for the Disabled in Cebu City, the Second National Congress on Special Needs Education, the issuance of Dex Order Number 104, or the exception of the physically handicapped from taking the National Elementary Achievement Test and the National Secondary Aptitude Test, or NSAT. Issuance of the Dex Order Number 108, strengthening of special education programs for the gifted in the public school system, and issuance of Dex Order Number 448, or the search for 1999 most outstanding special education teacher for the gifted. Memorandum Number 457 was also issued in 1999, that is the National Photo Contest on Disability. The following Dex Order were issued in 1999. Issuance of Dex Order Number 11, or Recognized Special Education Centers in the Philippines. Issuance of Dex Order Number 33, or implementation of Administrative Order Number 101, directing the Department of Public Works and Highways, the DEX, and the Commission on Higher Education to provide architectural facilities or structures features for disabled persons in all state colleges, universities, and other public buildings. Memorandum Order Number of 24, the Fourth International Noise Awareness, and Number 477, the National Week for the Gifted and the Talented. In the next video, we are going to talk about the legal basis of special education. Now, let's talk about the legal basis of special education. Special education in the Philippines is anchored on fundamental legal documents that present a chronology of events on the growth and development of the program. The first legal basis of the care and the protection of children with disabilities was enacted in 1935. Articles 356 and 259 of Commonwealth Act No. 3203 asserted the right of every child to live in an atmosphere conducive to his physically, moral, and intellectual development, and the concomitant duty of the government to promote the full growth of the faculties of every child. The Republic Act No. 3560, an act to promote the education of the blind in the Philippines, on June 21, 1963, provided for the formal training of special education teachers of blind children at the Philippine Normal College and the rehabilitation of the Philippine National School for the Blind, or PNSB, and the rehabilitation of the Philippine National School for the Blind, or PNSB, and the establishment of the Philippine Printing House for the Blind. Republic Act Number 5250, or 5250, an act establishing a 10-year teacher training program for teachers of special and exceptional children, was signed into law in 1968. The law provided for the formal training of teachers for deaf, hard of hearing, speech handicap, socially and emotionally disturbed, mentally retarded, and mentally gifted children and youth at the Philippine Normal College and the University of the Philippines. The 1973 Constitution of the Philippines, the fundamental law of the land, explicitly stated in Section 8, Article 15, the provision of a complete, adequate, and integrated system of education relevant to the goals of national development. The constitutional provision for the universality of educational opportunities and the education of every citizen as a primary concern of the government clearly implies the inclusion of exceptional children and youth. In 1975, Presidential Decree Number 603, otherwise known as the Child and the Youth Welfare Coded, was enacted. Article 3 on the rights of the child provides, among others, that the emotionally disturbed or socially maladjusted child shall be treated with sympathy and understanding and shall be given the education and care required by his particular condition. Equally important is Article 74, which provides for the creation of the special classes. Thus, where needs warrant, there should be at least special classes in every province and, if possible, special schools for the physically handicapped, the mental retarded, the emotional disturbed, and the mental gifted. The private sector shall be given all necessary inducement and encouragement. In 1978, Presidential Decree Number 1509 or Batas Pambansa bilang 232 states that the states in 1978 Presidential Decree Number 1509 created the National Commission Concerning Disabled Person or NCCDP. It was renamed as the National Council for the Welfare of Disabled Person. The Education Act of 1982 or Batas Pambansa bilang 232 states that the state shall promote the right of every child individual to relevant quality education regardless of sex, age, breed, socioeconomic status, physical and mental condition, social and ethnic origin, political and other affiliations. The state shall therefore promote and maintain equality of access to education as well as enjoyment of the benefits of education by all citizens. Section 24, the Special Education Service of the same law, affirms that the state further recognizes its responsibility to provide, within the context of the formal education system, services to meet special needs of certain clientele. These specific types shall be guided by the basic policies of the state embodied on general provision of this act, which includes special education, the education of persons who are physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, culturally different from so-called normal individuals that they require modification of the school practices or services to develop their maximum capacity. In 1983, Batas Pambansa Bilang 344 was enacted. The Accessible Law, an act to enhance the mobility of disabled persons, requires cars, buildings, institution establishment, and public utilities to install facilities and other devices for persons with disabilities. The 1987 Constitution of the Philippines cites the rights of exceptional children to education in Article 14. Section 1 declares that the state shall shall protect and promote the right of all citizens to quality education at all levels, and shall take appropriate steps to make such education accessible to all. In Section 2, it emphasizes that the state shall provide adult citizen, the disabled and out-of-school youth with training in civics, vocationally, vocation efficiency, and other skills. In 1989, Republic Act No. 6759 was enacted. The law declared August 1 of each as White Cane Safety Day in the Philippines. Blind persons use of the cane in traveling. In 1992, Republic Act No. 7610 was enacted. The law is an act providing for the strong deterrence and special protection against child abuse, exploitation, and discrimination, providing penalties for its violation and other purposes. In the year 2000, Presidential Proclamation number 361 set new dates for National Disability Prevention and Rehabilitation Week. Celebration on the third week of July every year, which shall culminate on the birth date of the sublime paralytic Apollinario Mabini. The year 2004 ushered in the landmark legislation spearheaded the Department of Health Republic Act No. 9288, otherwise known as the Newborn Screening Act of 2004, is based on the premise the retarded child could have been normal. A drop of blood can save the baby from mental retardation and death. Newborn screening is a very simple test that should be given to the baby 24 hours after birth. If the test is given too late, the baby can either die or even be severely retarded. Newborn screening is a blood test wherein a blood sample will be taken from the heel of the child. The sample, which is trapped in a special paper, is then sent by the hospital to a centralized testing center which is run by the National Institute of Health at its head office at the University of the Philippines in Manila. The test primarily checks for five metabolic disorders that could affect the health of of a child within the first few weeks of life. These are congenital hypothyroidism, congenital adrenal hyperplasia, and galactosemia, and G6PD deficiency. That's all for our video. I hope you learned the topics in Module 1. See you in the next video. Goodbye.